Hey everyone, we're still at KubeCon and you're still not. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and we're here at KubeCon, wrapping up a full week of open source, cloud native, Kubernetes joy. Or maybe it's joy. We're going to discuss that. Let me tell you who we've got to discuss it. We've got some of our core gang members who've been here all week. Let me introduce you to them. Well, you probably know most of them if you watch the Techstrong Gang at all. On my far left, he's usually high up in Colorado.
Don't put the pause in that.
He's at a higher elevation here in Salt Lake City, but anyway, it's our future VP of research for DevOps and some other stuff. I think even maybe cloud native. Yeah. Mitchell Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, welcome.
Great to be here. Great to be on with the gang.
Joining us, he's usually in Texas, but he's also here in Salt Lake City. I came to find out his family lived here in the 50s, so he's heritage.
Yeah, I wasn't in that family yet. But yes.
Okay. Well, I was going to say you were like a legacy now. So from now on, he'll be known as Flounder. No, but it's Guy Courier. Guy, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here as always.
And on my right, taking time out of his busy schedule, scouting minor league ball players for the Yankees here out west, our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Mike, welcome.
Happy to be back here. First time in 25 years.
20 years for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about it. So let me put forth a proposition. No, not that one. But, and then I'm interested in your takes on it. You know, they estimate there's 9,000 people at KubeCon. Mm-hmm. I estimate 1,500 of them are working at the 180 booths that are here on the floor. So there's probably 7,500 people attending Salt Lake City KubeCon. Not a number to sneeze at, but still not as big as it was pre-COVID North America, not as big as it is in America. You've got your keynotes, you got 24 tracks going on, sessions. You've got an expo hall that goes on forever in every direction that you can look at as far as the eye can see. Is it too much? Are people enjoying themselves? Are vendors getting their due who are paying good money to sponsor? Is there learning going on? Is it too overwhelming? Do we need to reorganize KubeCon? And if we're going to reorganize KubeCon, do we need to reorganize the whole sort of open source community way of doing things?
So
I've got a lot of thoughts on this.
There or something.
Well, I don't know if you need to reboot it, but do they need to look at rebooting this event and how we organize this open source? It is a thriving community, but is it ever going to get to that next place?
Well, just to jump in, if you the number of people that have contributed to OpenTelemetry and also to Kubernetes, a lot of those people are here. Not all of them, of course, but over time that community has grown up. I think that's a big part of what's here is people that are contributing to open source, so it's as well as the consumers of it.
Okay. 2% of a community or less contributes to open source. So you're telling me this whole show is for those 2%? That's not.
No, I don't think that's all who's there, because the other part of it is, I spend most of my time talking to the vendor community, not going to keynotes and, developer meetings. And maybe they're just being positive, but they seem really happy with the show, and they're getting good leads out of it and connections. And
so
it's not the looky-loos like we used to see at RSA. Like, I'd like to get into security. What tchotchke do you have?
There are other mitigating factors at work here. One is, as much as I like Salt Lake City, the reason they're not at their pre-COVID numbers is, they went to places like Salt Lake City, Chicago, and Detroit. And so they're not really going to pull that kind of people that you would get into Vegas or Orlando and whatever else. So that's part of the issue. The other thing is, we talked to some of the vendors here. They didn't even bring their sales teams. They're here to kind of do some bonding with some end users of their technologies, and they're hoping that build a relationship and maybe sell them later on something they can upsell, because the open source business model is much more of a, let's get everybody in the community and then start peeling people off to see if we can get them to buy something later kind of thing. That model, whether it works or not, is debatable.
Well, that's the key word there, isn't it? Community. That's just what I was thinking about it. I mean, you'd have probably a better perspective than I would, but the open source has been about community from the beginning. It's also been about commercially taking advantage of community. And I think what you're highlighting is that kind of imbalance, because the vendors didn't come here for free. They paid for it. And I have the feeling that Linux Foundation, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, sold as many booths as they could possibly sell. So there's a huge demand from the vendor side to be part of this community, because Cloud Native in particular, Kubernetes in particular, is clearly at a market peak right now.
And I could make an argument. I agree with what you said. I could make an argument that DevRel is now expanding into platform engineering. There are companies here saying, I have to figure out my DevRel strategy for platform engineering.
What DevRel?
Well,
every DevRel person I know got laid off over the last 2 years.
I'm just telling you what I heard.
Yeah,
so,
I'm telling you real life. We know a lot of DevRel people.
Well, and it may be that's changed. What we thought of DevRel 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, maybe that's not what DevRel looks like now. I don't know.
Maybe the devs are not as relevant as they used to be in terms of making those platform decisions.
We've been talking, about this pendulum swing on a lot of our engagements. The grand pendulum swing that we've been experiencing since the days of the mainframe between everything is in the hardware and in the infrastructure. That's what the developers need to code to developers need to be served by the infrastructure side, and it's the software development that should be the center of gravity. I think we've experienced 5-6 years now with containerization, Kubernetes, all this focus on infrastructure and cloud. We've experienced a good 5 years now of very infrastructure-centric development in the industry. And I think that led to the kind of layoffs and the kind of concern around investing in the developer community. But it's just going to swing back, isn't it? It's just going to swing back.
Look, I've been involved in open source for 25, 30 years. So have you. Fundamentally, there was always a question in the open source community. What's a successful business model? And what did people tell you? Look at Red Hat. Look at Red Hat. Red Hat, the poster child of open source success. IBM paid, $12 billion. Red Hat changed their licensing on their flagship product. What does that tell you? Well, HashiCorp, probably one of the most successful open source companies out here, changed their licensing. Yes, we forked OpenTofu, but HashiCorp still sold maybe less billions than it maybe would have. I'm telling you that fundamentally, these companies give you that happy talk from George Orwell in 1984 about, we don't want salespeople here. We want to kumbaya with the community. Bullshit. They want to sell product.
Are you suggesting that open source maybe is an unsustainable welfare state?
I think you said they're at the peak. Pat Riley was one of the greatest basketball coaches in the world, in history. Great teams at Los Angeles, the Knicks, the Heat. Why did he go to all those different teams rather than staying like Red Auerbach at the Celtics or John Wooden at UCLA? Because you can only stay on that peak so long before you fall off. And I think, and I'll call it, I think the last 5 years have been a golden era, maybe the last 10 years even, have been a golden era of open source, where we saw extreme experimentation on open source models. We had open core. We had foundational open source, where Foundation supported these things with multiple companies, participating, where we invested a lot of people who wore funny hats and went around with purple hair talking about kumbaya and delivering delight in their software, and that would magically lead to dollars at the end of that rainbow. And here's what happened. Companies had to change their licensing. They found out that those people in the funny hats and purple hair didn't necessarily translate into paying customers, that the open core model does have commercial application,
Yeah.
but that the fundamental numbers haven't changed. Out of 100% of people in the community, a handful, not even 2%, a handful actually contribute code. 2% maybe will contribute other ways. They'll contribute bugs, test beta, do stuff like that. And in an open source community, if you get 3 to 4% of your users converted to paid customers, you got a successful business, but it's very hard taking that to 10% or even 8%.
It's hard to present that to your startup board at the C round and say, we're going to keep doing that.
That's it.
That's
now,
the issue.
And that's fine when it's all a cottage industry. This is no longer a cottage industry. And so
It's a pretty big cottage. If you didn't-
it's kind of like on Jekyll Island if you've ever been there. But
There's another trend that's playing into this in a couple of conversations I had with a few of the senior IT folks who are here. And they're basically saying because of the incidents of what happened with Log4j, they're not buying anything or not allowing anything into production that doesn't have a sizable community around it. Because if it's only supported by a handful of people, they're like, that's a recipe for disaster. So they're starting to put some different guardrails in place for a lot of these projects. And a lot of these projects aren't going to meet that metric. And they're going to be not going to survive.
The problem becomes when those smaller projects that don't have the full
become
support.
orphaned.
Well, orphans, yes, exactly. Or they're still embedded within the things that do have a lot of support. That's what happened with Log4j.
And I'll put forth, it's not just the smaller projects. I personally know of some very big projects that the companies who originally hosted them would love to get out from under because they've moved on.
Well, I'm getting confused. Is this podcast about open source or is it about KubeCon?
This is the Techstrong gang. We talk about whatever the hell we want.
But I thought we were okay. So we just veered off. And I'm kind of
calling the timeout.
The argument is also we're saying that for all intents and purposes, the Cloud Native Foundation now is the leadership of open source community.
This is where open source lives.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, sure. And I get the funny feeling that there are other things that live here besides open source.
Money.
There are very few,
commercialization, money, if you like.
There are very few things that live here that are not open source.
Right.
Or that are not dependent on open source or that don't contribute to open source.
Or at least pretend to be.
It just, the origin of open, we just come a long way, baby, from the origins of open source.
Yes, we have. This is not the
and I think that may be your fundamental point here, Alan, is like, you started off with this true statement, just look around, look at the preponderance of vendors and products and pitches and messages and all of that other sort of stuff in comparison to practitioners and collaborators and contributors. That's the market space we're in right now. We haven't mentioned the elephant that came in and tromped all over everything. Namely, it starts with an A and ends with an I and doesn't have any letters in between. I feel like, that huge investment, a huge concrete global IT boost is being played out here right around us right now in so many ways.
I think 80% of these companies are
we're not immune.
viable.
Sorry, we're not immune in an open source community of collaborators trying to build value through that collaboration. Oh. We're not immune from that grand commercial force.
I use the ecosystem word, but that's what's around.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we're not immune.
We debated this a little bit, and I think this is where you're going. But if AI becomes the new mechanism by which I engage with all software, at some point, all those things in the back end converge because I'm just going to call them and I'm not going to care whether or not it was Prometheus, Kubernetes, or Grafana or whatever the hell else was on the back end. It's just all going to be one API call motion that mixes and matches as I go. So, am I going to have 175 projects, or are they all really features of something?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is it all
Not
under
only
the covers?
projects,
Yeah.
if you walk down here, those 10 by 10 booths are fast and furious. And there's probably 120 of them over here.
It's overwhelming, actually.
How many of them are viable companies?
I don't know. You tell me.
I could count it on my hands and toes.
I mean, I'm sure there's
you're in the
statistics.
10%
Hands and toes.
range.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's 1 out of 10 that
I
are
think it may
viable.
be 1 out of
And
50.
That
Yeah, let's split the middle. Let's say it's 1 out of 25
Okay,
or
1 out of
whatever it is,
25.
right? And out of those that are remaining, how many are going to be subsumed by some other
Well,
brand?
they all
some other
get
bigger
subsumed,
vendor?
right?
Yeah.
But just to put a point on this dot, right? So a couple of years ago, it was like, oh, well, you got to get to the developers because they bring you in and they're the big, powerful influencers.
Right.
That was the whole DevRel.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's fallen off. I think what we're seeing is a shift back towards platform engineering, centralized IT, standardized platforms, and those guys are going to decide what the
So
thing
you
is.
telling
There's
me
a
the
shift
2
back?
martini lunch is back?
Maybe.
There's a shift back to the monolith.
what time's our tea time?
There's a shift back to the monolith. I've heard that at least 5 times at this show.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've heard it. I've heard that as well with the nuance to it, whereas the monolith has got some APIs wrapped around it and it's just a big ass microservice. But other than that, it's the same thing.
A macro microservice?
Macro.
A mega microservice? Like, what is that?
There's a variation on that. What I hear is the target is enterprise, large enterprise,
Yes.
not mid-tier, not small.
Mhm.
It is.
No doubt. It's
Everybody's
large
going
enterprise.
after the scale.
Well, because, so here's the thing. What you got to look at this in connection to the macro world. The tech industry, dollars have dried up from VCs. VCs are saying, show me traction.
Yeah.
Show me traction. Show me paying customers. And I think what a lot of these companies have discovered is they've got to be in that enterprise market to make that kind of money. And
And
so
they're who have the problems that appear at scale, right? Versus this is new, interesting technology.
And all
Let me
the
use
tech
it.
startups that were buying or using a lot of this open source software themselves have
Oh, yeah.
disappeared, right?
or their budgets are tight as well. Their budgets are tight as well.
What's interesting is I don't see a lot of security people here.
Not as much as in past years.
Yeah. And isn't that so? I mean, you've got Sonatype, you've got a few folks that are in that area, but it doesn't have as strong a presence as I thought. By the way, I had one person say, I came here, I can't believe how much AI there is. I didn't expect that. I'm like, where have you been?
Didn't expect the AI here?
Yeah, where have you been?
I don't know.
Bit
I
of
had a
security.
weird conversation went like this. It's like, yeah, all the things you guys are saying are absolutely correct, but I'm still building a monolith. And I said, why? Because monolith is easier to build. And if the monolith is successful, then I'm hoping to have all those other problems and I'll get to them later.
There is
I
that.
have lifetime employment for all the problems I created in my monolith. Okay.
Let me just play devil's advocate because we're almost out of time here. The fact is, this is a huge petri dish. All these companies here, the issue is, yes, only maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 25, 1 out of 50 may in fact make it. It's knowing which one
Cool. Yeah.
is the hard
Exactly.
part, right? And everyone here, you could take 180 odd projects, but everyone takes a different view and uses it in a way maybe that hasn't been thought of before. And it's almost like evolution right before your eyes. And so maybe new things are synthesized out of this. But my closing argument is I'd like to see the CNCF reorganize KubeCon. I think the average person, it's too much for him to wrap their heads around, or her to wrap their head around at this show. I don't know what the answer is, doing micro shows or stuff
Let me
that.
take the counterpoint. Just
Go
to
ahead.
take the counterpoint.
Come on, Jane.
Rather than a petri dish, which I get, it's also the sorting hat, right? Because every one of these companies, not the ones that are well more established in the bigger booths.
I would say like Intel. Oh, maybe
yeah,
not.
those guys. Yeah. They do what we did in startup land, which is here's a problem. Let's go, see if the market's got that problem and build a product around it. The problem is there a big enough market? That's the next challenge. And that's the sorting hat, right? Is there enough people that want network figured out and security as we interconnect, multi-cloud, blah, 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 blah. Is that valuable enough to pay money? That's the sorting. So I would argue that the sorting hat has worked pretty good.
Okay.
So let the sorting hat sort.
But what's the mechanism of the sorting hat? I mean, I don't want to stretch your...
The market.
No, I hear you. I don't want to stretch your metaphor too far, okay?
Go for break it. You can do whatever.
Well, yeah, thank you. One of the things that has struck me about all of these messages and stories, whether it's keynotes, vendor meetings that I've had, a few customer discussions I've had, is that there's a whole lot of talk about what this widget or this tool or this contribution, what it allows, what the outcome is, a technical outcome. Now we can scale to 10,000, or now we can, handle a model of this size, or whatever it is. And there has been almost none about how they accomplish it, how it's done. It's. I don't want to say that it's like empty stories and messaging, because there's clearly substance behind it. But why isn't anybody talking about that? It's almost as if you're just supposed to trust us, and this is how it works. Here's our demo. That seems to be the level of excitement and interest.
But isn't that an indictment of society in general? No one looks. I don't want to get macro on you.
I cracked open the door. It was totally an accident. Forgive me.
All right.
All I heard was Petri dish, and now I need a hazmat suit.
I think the Petri dish idea is a little bit more compelling.
Sticking with sorting hat.
Because there are colonies that are going to grow, and there are those that are going to die out. It's going to be through a natural competitive mechanism.
All right, we got 1 minute left. We're going to do a little speed dating. Your big story, favorite thing at KubeCon this year, Mitch?
Kubernetes everywhere. It is the dominant. It is the operational workload operating system.
Your favorite?
I've been impressed by the dark horse of this conference, which is WebAssembly, WASM.
WASM. Good.
That's the dark horse. Dark horse or force?
We're going to talk about this probably in the next show, but my favorite is patent trolls, man. They're after all the open source guys, and there's high drama and conflict. What more do you want?
What patents? We don't need no stinking patents. Look, for me, it's the viability of open source business models. And I thought for a while that we'd answered that question, but I'm beginning to think we haven't.
That coin flipped. I agree.
All right. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this. We're going to be back Monday with a fresh Techstrong gang. But for now, as I said, we're here in Salt Lake City. You're not. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.
Is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I'm really thrilled to have this next guest on here. I love introducing our audience to new companies. This is a fairly new company. Well, it's new to us anyway. I want to introduce you to Alex Ye. Alex is the CEO and founder of a company called GMI Cloud. That's good. Well, he's going to explain what GMI stands for, maybe. But Alex, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, Alan. Well, happy to be here.
Yep. So we're going to get into GMI Cloud in just a second, but let's talk a little bit about Alex. As I said, you're the CEO and founder of GMI Cloud. Tell us your story.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting story for me, at least. I stumbled upon entrepreneurship and went down a rabbit hole. I guess one mistake after another.
Welcome to the club, man.
Exactly. So I was my background. Well, I'm an engineering background. I graduated from Hopkins with a materials engineering degree. I stumbled upon cryptocurrency. About in 2017, and I was just lucky. My high school friend showed me something about Bitcoin and then some Ethereum, so I bought both. And then because Ethereum was cheaper than Bitcoin at the time, I didn't know what that is. Yeah, and so I bought that, and it started rising. Right, so I thought, wow, this is interesting, and I learned more about it. that was basically my beginning into the digital asset world. But I also always had this, I would say, traditional finance training aside from my engineering path. It took, I guess, double major in business and understood a little bit about financial markets. Um, and at the time, I still don't understand what cryptocurrency is about, what it does. But what I understand is like, the definition of company is to create, I would say, shareholder value or return dollars, right? But crypto at the time, I just couldn't understand like why you creating something out of thin air and then without any value. And so the right move for me at the time was basically jumping into the fix and shovel space, because I think about what built America. It's the infrastructure that builds, right? It's steel, it's the railroads, it's the oil, right? That, and also in the 2000s, right? It's the IBM, the Cisco, the Windows that actually it sits as the operating system or infrastructure for all of these amazing applications out there. And so I jumped into, I would say, Bitcoin mining as a investor. Excuse me. So that's what I did, and I just bought some machines and hosted at my friend's data center in Inner Mongolia, China. If you've never been,
Okay.
it's a beautiful place. It's my only time there. Is to see where my machines are running. Beautiful place, but I guess in 2020 she doesn't really like Bitcoin all that much, right? So entire China shut down. It got moved multiple locations within China. But in 2020, May 23rd, it got shut down in one day. Zero notice. Insane if you think about it, right? They shut down the entire industry in one day. And so I had two choices. Either one, I write down my investment, or I send it somewhere else. And so I had plenty of options, but at the time I was like, all right, US is the market that I understand. I graduated from Hopkins and spent, more than 8 years at the time, in US. So, all right. So I put a one-way ticket to New York. I was like, all right, I'm going to find a location. I'm going to find a data center. How hard could it be? Right? Again, I kept saying that, right? That is a mistake that I kept on making. I think it's just my naive
Really?
optimism. So how hard could it be? And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to call Digital Realty. I'm going to call Vantage, like data center, no big deal. And difficult, right? Let me tell you that. 80% at the time miners were in China. And so everyone's moving out, right? Imagine like there's zero infrastructure. Right now we're in a gold rush of data center as well. So it's the same thing that will happen in 2020. So fast forward, it took me, I would say, 6 months from a investor that's no operating experience to try to find data center, and there's no results, right? Everyone wants an arm and a leg. And so what I did was like, all right, I'm gonna build it myself. Another mistake I was saying.
So I did this in 1999, I want you to know, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna build myself, right? And then I got some like supply chain connections in China and Taiwan. I can figure it out. So in 2021, actually, it's a very difficult time. I think by the time I was like the most knowledgeable 26-year-old about U.S. power market. I flipped every stone of every state possible to have power. On West Coast, Washington State, California, expensive power. You guys should know about it. Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, to Wisconsin, to Mississippi, to East Coast, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, you name it, all over the place. I even people even sent me deals about Ukraine that's pre-war, and Georgia, the country, not the state.
No, I get
right?
it. Mhm.
And like somewhere in Northern Europe, I went to Iceland in middle of December. Don't go there during that time.
No, not in December.
Yeah, so in the end, I knew everything about the power market. I signed a deal in 3 days. Can you imagine? I bought a piece of land in 3 days.
You actually bought the land to build the data center on? Good for
right.
you. That's bold.
As a 26-year-old Asian guy going into middle of Arkansas and talk to a 74-year-old landlord, and it's like, I want to buy your land. I want to buy your power. I want to build a data center, which is a surreal experience for me. But I did it in 3 days.
I think it would be a surreal experience for everyone, but go ahead.
So, but that was that was after reviewing hundreds, I would say hundreds of term sheets, right? By that time, I already knew everything about this market, so I was able to make decision very quickly. Day one, I see their data, the data room. I know this is gonna work. So I call the landlord. It's like, I'm fine the next day. The third day, basically handshake and deals are done because he was a very, very nice Texan person. So he's like, he's big numbers guy. It worked out. Um, so that was like the beginning, right? And after that, supply chain, and it was peak-COVID. Remember, peak-COVID, everything shut down. I wasn't able to navigate supply chain, all that, difficult. In Taiwan, in China, to ship containers, ship transformers, ship a lot of equipments out, and then servers out at the same time. I had my container ships. I was tracking it on satellite, and it was sitting outside of Houston port for 20 days. It was sitting out there. You see thousands, hundreds of ships, big container ships.
Kind of look
sitting
like
outside.
Singapore. If you haven't been to Singapore, it's like that every day, right?
Yeah, crazy. So yeah, fast forward. So we built site one and beautiful, worked out really well, and then raised venture funding, and raised two rounds after a pre-seed and seed, and then built out. The first one is the most difficult one. Built 3 sites out, right? And then about a year ago, our investor and also founder friends was like, "Hey, Alex, actually, I know you're in HPC business, high performance computing business, and like we need a lot of GPUs, and our portfolio needs GPUs, or like we need GPUs." And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. I can learn more about it. And then I met, I would say a mentor, now advisor and investor, which is the co-founder of DigitalOcean. And I was like, oh yeah, so I'm thinking about pivoting into GPU, like basically cloud business. Can you tell me more about it? And he was like so excited. It's like, Alex, you're building the GPU for DO, like that's DO for GPU, basically. And so if you guys know about DigitalOcean, it's basically, I would say, a neo cloud, taking down, I would say, giants, taking down Amazon, AWS, and so forth. So I really got that inspiration. So the pivot was also very difficult because from a hardware data center into a cloud stack, and I did that. Right? I would say in 6 months. So October of last year was the first time when I pivoted, and I hired the entire software team. I hired the team. So the CTO of Minnow AI, which is part of Google X, part of a beautiful Google X project. The CTO came out, brought VP engineering, brought director of product, as well as LM came out. That's the software team, and then hired a very experienced finance team from JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. He spent 12 years there, and he was a group CFO of one of the largest Nasdaq listed data center company. Came out, and our COO, who was one of my first employee from Supermicro, and he's like, Alex, I was a chapter director for Supermicro building H100, which is the GPUs that everyone's talking about. It's like, I knew everything about this machine. And so he went to Supermicro and took a lot of his old, I would say, colleagues to join us. So that was really, I would say, the hardware and the software team was finance team that really built that under 6 months. And on top of that, we built 3 data center, clusters, GPU clusters, in Taiwan and also in Thailand within 6 months, right?
Fantastic.
And then find close to 12 customers that wants our software as well as hardware. So, in 6 months' time, we built a software team, hardware team, the finance team, built 3 data centers, built a product, and got customers. I was
crazy time.
Crazy.
Yeah, good for you, man. Congratulations.
I didn't have a lot of sleep. So that was basically the entire pivot and how we built this. And GMI, right? I think you asked that question. GMI stands for General Machine Intelligence. So we're here to build the HI future. We're building the foundation for the HI future. And what that means is basically we want to build, I would say, a Wix or a Squarespace for AI. Right now, it's so hard to deploy AI. You need a team of 20, 30 people, or even 50 people to build foundational model, or you want to fine tune some product, create a vertical AI. And we want to make that super easy and seamless, right? Allowing any individual worker, any founder to build an AI application instantly, right? Allowing anyone to deploy AI instantly is my vision for the company.
I love it. I love it. You know, Alex, I see so many parallels. So 30 years ago, 35 years ago, there's no such thing as hosting. There's no cloud per se, right? We didn't call it cloud. And I did the same thing, started in a friend's data center, went and got our own data center, sold my company to a company that had big Morgan Stanley and Chase money behind them. We wound up being actually the predecessor to DigitalOcean was called Inktomi, and they were one of our competitors. We went public, did that whole thing during the .com, right? We had data centers in Tysons, Virginia, and in France, and in Atlanta, and a bunch of other places. 30 acquisitions in 36 months. Crazy time.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I listening to your story gets my juices flowing. But we're in a whole new world now, right? Because the GPU and the AI is where it's at. We're not going to have time to get into everything I'd love to get into with here, but we're going to see you in KubeCon. And we're going to continue this conversation because I want to hear about the software, right? I think we all understand the hardware and then the NVIDIA and all of that, the GPU. But what people don't get is that it's always about the software, right? It's always the software.
It is.
And we want to jump into that. But a couple things right now just to get out of the way, and we'll pick this up. You're going to be at KubeCon. GMI Cloud is at KubeCon. You're at booth Z, like Zebra 2, Z2, and people can come by and get more information there. But basically what you're offering is almost sort of GPU as a service, right? Generative AI as a service. Is that fair?
So if I give you like a quick like 1 minute, the state of the market is everyone's just selling boxes, and I hate that. People are like, "Oh, we got GPUs," and I'm like, "So what, right? You're here to build a solution. You're not here to buy GPUs. That is the means to the end." And so what we're trying to build is build a vertical solution. If you want to build a RAG, we got a RAG playbook for you. If you're building a text to image model or text to video model, we got a playbook for you, right? You need from basically optimizing on the model selection to the data procurements to the data processing, ETL data, all the way to a kind of visualization of how your model is performing, to the orchestration of the software for GPUs. And so wouldn't it be nice to have all of that under one platform, right? We want to build a useful tool for anyone to build AI, right? We're not here to just sell GPUs because, like, what are you going to do with that, right? And a lot of people...
This is exactly where I was 30 years ago, right? The web hosting providers were selling what we used to call them power, ping, and pipe, right? Power, ping, and pipe. And that's what they sold you. We were selling application service provider, different apps. Then you had Lotus Notes and PeopleSoft and Oracle. But we were selling you the whole hosted application, not just power, ping, and pipe into your 1U or 4U server.
That's right.
It's what's old is new, my friend. It never changes. It's the same kind of
history doesn't repeat that, but it certainly definitely rhymes.
Yeah, it absolutely. Very cool. Hey, what's the website?
It's gmicloud.ai.
.ai. Love it. Alex, we're way over that 15 minutes. I probably took 20, 25, but we're going to continue this at KubeCon next week.
Absolutely.
Actually, by the time, next week, people will see this week, and we'll be there next week. Again, for people who want to visit, booth Z2, that Z is in Zebra 2. Also, just real quick, we're doing a breakfast at KubeCon Tuesday morning. Alex, it's not a sales thing. Just come have a good breakfast and coffee if you're there Tuesday. Anton and the rest of your team is all invited. Inviting anyone out here who's going to be there. Come on in. You can register. Get to it off our website. KubeCon's a week away. Alex, what a great story. I always tell people, you know how I can tell successful entrepreneurs? Their passion. If you can't feel their passion about what they're doing and talking to them, they're not going to be successful. Your passion comes through loud and clear, man. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thanks for having me. Look forward to meet you at KubeCon.
Absolutely. Alex Yee, CEO and founder of GMI Cloud. the future of AI infrastructure and cloud computing right here. We'll speak to him live next week from KubeCon. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I got a first-time guest here on the show with me today. His name is Ivan Novikov. Ivan is the CEO of WallArm. WallArm, of course, is an API security firm. I say, of course, you may not know that. You're going to know it after we're done here, I hope. But first, let's welcome Ivan. Hey, Ivan, welcome to Techstrong TV. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me here, and Alan, have a good day.
Thank you. So, Ivan, before we jump into WallArm and what we want to talk about, let's hear a little bit about you. As I said, you're the CEO there. Are you a founder, co-founder, or, give us a sense of your path to becoming CEO at WallArm.
Sure. So my path is kind of like quite simple. I started hacking at my, 11, 12, and then run kind of like bug bounties as a researcher. And that time it was, very fun to get some money, right? When you're young and you can, easily get the bug, find it and apply to, Facebook or Google or Twitter and instantly get, a couple of hundred or sometimes a couple of thousands, which is like absolutely awesome. And then somewhere around 2009, I run a consultancy firm, basically the pen test shop. And we did many different projects, mainly for companies starting with, Western Europe, Germany, and then UK, and then United States. Our focus at that time was to do what others can't. And that time it was two different things. So first of all, it's a large source code audits, like hundreds of megabytes, and many times, very old-fashioned frameworks that no one actually want to touch. So we go all in that time. And then also kind of like pen tests after others, when someone run a pen test, but the company wants some extra. So we did that. So I ran that for roughly 6-7 years, completely profitable business. And then with a few engineers and folks around, so we realized that it's a great idea to kind of like run the product, our own product, because we have a lot of experience, we know what to do. And we also, get a few customers that actually asking us for very specific things, right? And that time, the gap was very clear. The gap was as simple as that. WAFs doesn't work for APIs, right? And APIs getting more and more traction. And I'm not talking about APIs we have now. I'm talking about APIs, 2016, 2014, right? At that time, it was mainly legacy APIs. If you remember the term enterprise service bus, that stuff, they mainly were built inside for CRM or inter-ERP communication that, they were kind of like deeply hidden inside. They very rarely were open, in the public to the internet. And so we start focus on that and actually build a product. And 2016 finally released that during the YC Inception program in Silicon Valley. And since that time, start to build more and more and get more and more traction. That's my story.
Fantastic. I love it. The whole API security space, I don't know. It was during COVID, so it had to be bad. 3-4 years ago, it really kind of burst on the scene. And what was interesting, and maybe it was a child of its times, all of a sudden, the first couple of companies in the space had like unicorn status instantly, right? Thinking about like companies like No Name and stuff, right? These companies all of a sudden had multi-billion-dollar valuations, where I really felt that we were in the beginning stages of API security. We weren't even really talking about how to secure our APIs. We were talking about just how to discover what APIs we had, right? Because I think that was job one early on in the API security space was, hey, do you know what APIs you have? And then do you know what their configuration is? Do you know what their security posture is or profile is? And then let's talk about locking them down and doing, API security. But then it seems, Ivan, like within a space of 2 or 3 years, a bunch of sort of the leading ones in terms of they raised the most money right away or stuff like that, they got bought, some of them for not great multiples, I'll add. I mean, I happen to know from, where I sit, they were not huge relative to the top of the market valuations they had. How do you see the evolution of the AI API security market?
Yeah, so let me kind of like point a few different things here. So first of all,
I had a mouthful there.
Sure. You mentioned kind of unicorn status. I mean, many different companies got the unicorn valuation in 2021 because mainly it was related to the market condition rather than the use cases. And I mean, in a simple word, money was cheap, right? And when we have some demand, right, we can raise the valuation, which doesn't mean that it was somehow like related to the reality or their actual ARR or other things, which then somehow will resolve, right? And now we see completely different dynamic of that companies and others, right? So and then in other words, I don't think that it was only related to the domain of API security or kind of like novel idea of that. And so I really think that the API security started at least 2016 or even early, when companies, specifically enterprise companies, realized that they need to protect their APIs. And in many cases, it's actually run kind of like hype and boom of API management tools, right? Gateways and so on, because this is the first thing that, companies actually do. And now the dynamic is a bit different, and the customer demand and the request that we got from the market, specifically enterprise markets, is also different. So if a couple of years ago it was mainly, hey, let's do something to help us to discover how many APIs do we have and what to do with them, they were ready to pay for that. Nowadays, the story is, hey, I know my APIs. At least I have some kind of sense how many of them kind of insecure or could not be secure. So what's next, right? So we initially focused on a bit different side of the problem. So our focus was real-time blocking, so block attacks instead of just discover things, because discovery was kind of like our thing. And nowadays, the market demand and the main request for API security is exactly this. Hey, let's help me to block my attacks for my APIs, because many of them now, opposite to what was 2014 or 16, now exposed online, so exposed to the internet because of two things. So first of all, mobile apps. Every single mobile app you run on your iPhone connect to the API, right, to the backend to have some data. And the second thing is overall, single page apps and the way how we now build in web apps, they all consumes API now. It's absolutely, a standard de facto. So, and internal usages, right? And internal growth of APIs definitely driven by AI. So AI consumes APIs a lot. They need data, and we have more and more use cases. So the real question now is like how to block attacks and how to protect my APIs in real time. And it was our core idea and the core differentiator from early beginning, because we can do it at scale with almost zero latency, and we have large customers, with the biggest infrastructures all over the world who are using us in line to block these attacks. That's how I see the API world now.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit about kind of what makes WallArm unique. Talk to us though more about WallArm, if it's okay, Ivan.
Mm-hmm. Sure. As I said before, right? Don't blame me if I'll be so technical, but in fact,
no problem.
Instead of following the usual way to apply regular expressions, and now, by the way, nowadays the kind of open source apps like ModSec or Karaza became kind of modules for many API security products that are available on the market. So we decided to don't do this, because API's traffic is different and we cannot just apply signatures. They will provide a lot of false positive. And so instead of this, we introduced a new engine that basically can kind of decompile, really similar to decompilers, right? Decompile requests in real time and parse them in the right way to then find out if there is any, syntax, such as, what we call payload syntax. It could be JavaScript or SQL, whatever is there. It could be script or just plain Java to find out if there is any set of instructions that could be potential malicious. But it also helps us to decode very sophisticated API structures itself, because let's say we're talking about open banking API, right? It's not just like in JSON or XML. It's a combination of this. You have an XML inside the package. You have the JSON inside the JSON. You have some big base64 chunk. So Volume is the only tool that can decode all of this, including their nested encodings in real time without configuration. The system will understand what's going on automatically in real time. This is absolutely killer feature, and for all these years, no one can repeat it. So that allows us to easily show the value. So essentially, it's one serial command. You can send this request, and everyone understand what's going on, right? Because other tools, starting with WAFs and continue by modern API tools, they cannot even decode what's going on, right? If they cannot decode it, then there is no way to secure that stuff, right? And very similar to what you explained before about the discovery. So the discovery also have some kind of like levels, right? At first level, you just discover that API is here. At the second level, you discover what this API is doing, right? At the third level, where we actually operate, and you actually know which kind of data and in which field this API actually consumes and produce, right? And in many cases, this requires a lot of configuration for other tools. And for us, it's just like zero configuration at all. That allows us to do a lot. And that's a secret sauce. It also allows us ultimately, right, to block attacks in real time, because we can see all of this data in real time. And because we never rely on any other engine such as regex, we can do it in almost real time and almost with zero latency, depending on like CPU usage and resources that the system consume for that. But that's the key, and that's finally recognized by the market, and we get exactly the same requests as the products that we built.
Fantastic. All right, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk. You guys at Warlarm. Well, before I do, what's the URL for the Warlarm? For Warlarm, is it warlarm.com, IO, AI?
Yeah, that's warlarm.com.
Okay, that's WALLARM. All right, let's switch gears. You guys recently came out with a new product, kind of in response to Akamai acquiring No Name. Again, No Name was one of those unicorns early on in the space. Let's call it missionary work and API security. They were acquired by Akamai. Akamai, of course, a big company, big security company, CDN. Let's talk about, this product you launched in response to that.
Sure. The first of all, we kind of definitely we release it now, but we built it like almost a year ago, and we spent a year to test it for many different customers around the world, even the largest one, just to make sure that we make it done before we officially release it. So at that time, it was not clear that the acquisition going to happen, right? So it's not kind of like technical response. So technically, we built the product like a bit early. But you're right. Akamai is a CDN company. As many other CDN companies, they want to get some more value, right, from the same infrastructure, right? Extract some extra margin. And they're doing this by adding features. One of the strongest offers of Akamai was definitely Kona WAF, the WAF offer. And now they want to do the same with API security things, right? To just add this into the same offer and like the question that we have from, and a request that we have from enterprise customers, I mainly mean like large customers with a lot of traffic and a lot of Akamai consume as, hey guys, why we should pass our dynamic content such as API data via CDN if CDN is for caching, right? And it's instantly bring to the different point, which problems, which latency performance issues I can introduce to my customers, because now instead of going direct to my edge, right, they have to go through the Akamai cloud that may not route them in a perfect way. And it's kind of like, it's definitely a lot of optimization for large images or video content, the static content that they can surf and, like kind of move to you. But if it's your backend and you still need to get some response, from dynamic data, such as calculate some, like transaction fields or, proceed your transaction if it's like fintech, or banking stuff, right? It definitely makes no sense to pass this traffic through CDNs, right? And it's instantly bring to the point, hey, why I should pay for the traffic? Why I should pay for kind of by CDN prices for the something that should not be even a part of the CDN, right? And that's a part of this security offers. So instead of doing this and running this, building our own cloud provider and ask customers to run our traffic through, we found that, hey, customers will consume CDNs. It's a great tool and they need it, but they don't need CDN for APIs, right? Because APIs is dynamic content, but they need API security. So we found a way, actually recommended and advised by customers, specifically large e-commerce customers in state. They said, hey, what if you will deliver your product on our edge? In many cases, your AWS or Google region, very, very close, basically the same region, right, as your backends, and then install your software and manage the software for us, right? For them, our customers, it basically means that they have all this API security layer in the top of their edge, right where they have backends. They know latency. No one will route their traffic through Singapore because something is broken and so on. Customers directly have an access, but all the requests secure because there is a edge security edge offer deployed by Wallam, and we manage this. So it's kind of like private cloud experience that deployed on their edge, and it also allow us to be as close to our customers as possible. In many cases, our customers can even, manage this infrastructure if they want, but for now it's managed offer. And it's absolutely no headache because, again, like the same as the cloud experience. So you just switch your DNS name. In their case, the DNS name is just internal DNS name of their cloud provider, like AWS or Google or Azure, or whenever they deploy it, right? And zero latency, or at least, compared to the full cloud, traffic routing, which is absolutely amazing. And it's basically help our customers right now to save, money, because, and our license fee just like a part of their savings. So they really save money with us because they not only save by this kind of like CDN offers where they charge a lot for basically, not something that should be charged and even route through them, but also your cloud provider will charge you for incoming traffic that came somewhere else, right? So there is absolutely no fees because we deployed in the same region and they don't have any charges for the traffic from the same region. So you only pay for incoming traffic that came from your customers and you don't pay twice. It's absolutely great. And that's the current thing. And we have definitely significant traction there. For us now, it's kind of like next way to deploy the product. Definitely we want to expand the pipeline by adding more and more deployment options. And also it's a kind of completely new product offer because we can add more features specifically related to edge, not related to our hybrid offer or on-prem offer. And that's definitely what we plan for almost a year, even more, and finally release it.
I love it. What's the name of this, or what do you call this?
We call it Security Edge.
The Edge. I love the idea, right? You're trying to out-nimble Akamai here by saying, hey, Akamai may get to the edge eventually, but you got to go through their whole network for it. We're just going to go straight to your edge, the edge nearest to you, and do it from there. So it's kind of Wallam, the API security company, at your edge. And that's good. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Ivan, I promised you 15 minutes. We were over that. I apologize, but thank you for coming on here and educating us. This sounds like, a great way of, as I said, out-nimbling some of these bigger companies by taking advantage of technologies like the Edge, which, is coming on strong. Continued success at Wallam. Come back and keep us posted, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Have a great
All righty. Thank you. Ivan Novikov, CEO at Wallam, talking about bringing API security to your edge directly here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hello and welcome to the Digital CXO podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and with me today is Laura Stash. She is the Executive VP of Solutions Architecture at iTech AG. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's voting day and I voted. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I voted early. I wasn't sure how long the lines would be today. How long were the lines today?
Oh, well, I took my 4-year-old and my 2-month-old with me, so I got to cut the line.
Oh, nice. Wonderful. Well, to start off, can you share a little bit about iTech AG and what services are provided?
Yeah, absolutely. iTech AG is an IT consulting firm. We provide technology transformation, mostly in low-code and no-code digital platforms, including, AI features, data management features, cybersecurity features, et cetera.
Wonderful. All right. Well, recently the U.S. National Archives announced their new strategic framework, which will serve as a template to guide the development of a full strategic plan. And it charts a course for the agency that emphasizes building digital capacity, scalability, and responsibility, embracing technological innovation.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that today. And talk about AI and what an impact AI has made and machine learning has made. So what are you seeing out there? What are you hearing from business leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually had a couple of AI contracts exactly doing what the archives does, which is document digitization. And we are supporting multiple agencies using machine learning tools and platforms to digitize those previously paper files, and make those things that are digital files that became digital files or were originally digital files easier to navigate, find, and explore for different purposes across the government.
Wonderful. Can you share a little bit about what are some of the things included in this new strategic framework that business leaders should be aware of?
Yeah, of course. So I think the main thing is about how much we're going to trust that AI is the big hot topic for everybody. So the thing about document digitization and creating scalability and capacity is it costs a lot of money to digitize records, especially if you're digitizing manual records. It costs a lot of money to index those digital records once you have them. Some agencies have gotten quotes where it's like 15 cents per page, which is nuts, right? That's millions and billions of dollars if you think about all the records that we have within the United States or within a given agency even. So the benefit of machine learning and these large language models is that those records can be digitized and indexed and searchable at a much lower cost. But the only way that we're going to actually achieve that cost savings and be able to digitize those is if we train those models. So there's a thing called human in the loop. And what's being talked about a lot is how do we train those models in a way that's responsible? And for government leaders and government employees to feel confident and secure once they train those models, that they don't have to continue to touch every single document or every single metadata, that they've trained it, it's accurate, we trust it, and now it can go and do its thing at basically a free cost, right? Just the setup cost. So that's kind of, I think the hot topic is how much are we going to trust that AI? How much do we trust that once we've trained it and then it's accurate, it's going to stay that way, and there won't be hallucinations, right? That's a key topic in AI. So I think those would be probably the two hot topics I would speak about first.
Yeah, that's definitely a key issue of concern. We have seen hallucinations. How much can we trust the data? And I don't feel that anyone really believes AI can just be left to run by itself at this time. It's still just a good tool amongst other technologies.
That's right. And so it's like, what's that percentage of human in the loop that's needed? at the start, you train it, and you feel confident in the training. And then, is it 1%? Is it 10% of the records that you want to touch to make sure that it's not hallucinating, or to make sure that you're catching those outliers, make sure that you're continuing to train that large language model, or train, other elements of it. Maybe there's new types of records that come in and needs to be trained, right? So what's that level of touch, and what's the cost associated with it, right? That's kind of the key topic going on in the industry today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this technology is advancing quite rapidly. So I'm sure we're going to see eventually down the road. Do you think that it will be able to just be let loose and run on its own, or do you think we're pretty far from that?
I think it can be let loose and run on its own for standard forms, if that makes sense. So a lot of what happens in government is there's all these like standardized forms that don't change over time. Like some agencies have forms that have been the same since like the 90s or even before that, right? So my opinion is that the large language models can be trained on those types of things, and then we can kind of leave them alone. For the unstructured data, I think it's more dangerous, and that's where you see a lot of the hallucinations happening. That requires a little bit more of a hands-on. So it just depends on the type of data and how good the training data is, and how much of that training data is available, whether you can actually leave it alone or not.
Yeah, and the other question is, we get more and more data by the minute. So how do we keep up with all the new data and all the new records?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting is the NLP and the AI personalization, right? So not just the data that the government has that people are trying to access, but the data about how people are trying to access it and what they're trying to access, and then using that data to make the response better in the future. So for sure, for that reason, you'd never leave the model alone, because you always want to see, what are people accessing? How are they trying to access it? How can we make that customer service element or that personalization better? Which is exactly what iTech AG is trying to do with a lot of our AI products today, is like use AI for better customer service and personalization.
So let's talk about that. I know that that's a key issue for business leaders, how to harness this data for that better customer experience. What tips do you have for business leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen in the market first is really just setting up like a virtual agent chatbot and agent assist features, so that when a customer is reaching out to your company or the government, whatever your model may be, that it can quickly summarize what they're asking for. It can pull together all the history of any interaction with that customer all together really quickly, so that either the person or the system that's responding to that customer has all that information, and they're not starting from square one. What you see even now, maybe when you're not Amazon, but when you're interacting with other tools in the industry that have chatbots, like my bank, for instance, right? I tried to ask it to Zelle someone the other day. Every time I go to try to Zelle someone, it doesn't remember that I Zelled this person last week or whatever, right? And it's treating me like I'm net new, and that I have to go through all these 17 steps every single time, right? So improved customer service would be like, great to see you again, Laura. Do you want to Zelle this person you Zelled last week? Click this one button and it's done, right? So I think that's the personalization element that we can start to leverage and harness. And once we do, people will adopt AI better and faster.
Absolutely. So from your experience, I know many people are still hesitant to embrace AI technology, fear of the unknown. So when it comes to implementing new technology of any sort, including AI, what advice do you have for getting everybody on board and on the same page?
Yep. I think, and I've said this in a couple of interviews and different articles that I've been quoted in, is I think it's making it so that it's easier for them to use AI than to not use AI, making it seamless. So a lot of times you'll see AI in the platforms we're already using, whether that's a Microsoft platform or maybe even in Zoom, right? Or whatever thing you're already currently doing. If you just add an AI element into it to say, hey, you can do this faster or better using AI, click this button, I think people will start to use it and they'll be less afraid and less scared of it, right? Versus having to go to a separate tool or a separate product to do whatever AI steps that they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what's the big takeaway you'd want to leave them with?
Big takeaway. Okay. Well, the big takeaway I would say is AI is happening either way, so we might as well embrace it. And if we do embrace it, then AI will be more useful or beneficial to whatever business model you're applying it to.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds in the future and just what use cases it can be applied to.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you, and thanks to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Matt Gorham, who is Senior Managing Director for the Cyber and Privacy Innovation Institute at PwC, and we're talking about the SEC rules a year on. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Right. So what's your sense of where are we with these rules? I think when they first came out, everybody was, shall we say, a sense of terror. Somebody thought that the sheriff was in town and everybody was going to have all these new rules and regulations. Is that how it played out? Or has it been more of a slow roll? What's your assessment of what's going on here?
I think what we've seen from the, and I'll break it into two pieces. The first around the material incident disclosure, the second around the annual disclosure. So things around cybersecurity strategy, process, and governance. I'd say there's a lot of concern initially on the material incident disclosure. I think it was mainly focused around the 4-day time period after you'd made the determination around materiality. But I think what we've seen play out is that companies were already required to make those material disclosures prior. And so it was about the documentation and the process internally and making sure that it was sufficient to meet that 4-day requirement. We've seen some things shift, but I'm not entirely sure they're as a result of the SEC rule. And what I'd highlight here is incidents that have been disclosed on 8Ks that were actually non-material incidents. We started to see that immediately before the rule was put into place, so much so that eventually the SEC came out and said, don't use 1.05, which is the cyber 8K version. If you're going to disclose a non-material incident, you use 8.01, which is that other category to document those. There is some thought that that was a reaction to or a response to from companies to be more transparent, to kind of get those out in a prophylactic way prior to an incident becoming material. But it's just as likely, I think, in my estimation, that's a result of the changing view of being the victim of a ransomware attack. What I mean by that is, if you go back a couple of years, companies were very concerned about the reputational impact of being the victim of a ransomware attack. Today, companies are less, just given the volume, less concerned about being the victim and more concerned reputationally about how they respond. And so you've seen companies be much more transparent around that response. And so if you look at those non-material 8Ks, I think you could look at them much more as kind of holding strategic comms documents rather than a required disclosure. But in any event, we've seen the SEC come back and say, if you're going to voluntarily disclose something that's not material, either because you haven't gotten to the materiality thresholds or because you just want to get this out voluntarily, use the other form. Don't do it under the cyber rule. I think if I go to the 10K, I think what we've seen is a shift to putting information all in one form. That is, companies had to pull from their proxy statement and their risk factors and write some net new, but it's really about putting that all in one place in a format that would allow investors to compare and see that. And we're in the final stages of that year, right? So we're getting ready to start seeing the 930 filers, which will be the first time they've had to file the new 10K. But we've seen some consistency across, but again, not in a way that is earth-shattering and some of the kind of the worry before the rule was implemented.
Do we have a handle on what defines a material incident these days? Because I think people are still kind of having that conversation a little bit.
Yeah, look, materiality is a legal concept that requires a legal judgment. And so you use the Supreme Court definition, what's going to be of interest to the investor, the reasonable investor. I think it's both a qualitative and quantitative side. So it's not just a number threshold, a financial threshold that you can point to, but it's also that qualitative assessment of the incident. So it's things like, how does this impact our competition? How does it impact our competitiveness? How does it impact our reputation, our third-party relationships? Those are all things that need to be considered. And so there's not a black and white answer to it's an incidence material. It's a quantitative and qualitative assessment, which is principles based, right? It's applying those principles to the specific facts and circumstances that you have there. And again, that's not a change from where they were prior to the rule, because they were required to disclose those prior to the rule being implemented as well. The difference is today it has the force and impact of a rule, and you have to do it within that 4-day period once you make that determination. I think most companies have looked at that, and maybe they made some refinements around that process of how they're documenting it, how they're making that determination. But again, they already had to do it, and so we haven't seen a great change, despite the very concerning comments that you saw early on.
Mhm. Is it getting easier to build the reports? Because it's still early days in the age of AI, but it seems like just about everything involving a report is getting easier to do. So is that becoming less onerous?
Yeah, I think you still need to go through and validate that disclosure. And so there are still manual processes involved in that, but there are certainly tools and the capability exists to collect some of that data up in a quicker, more automated way. And companies are availing themselves of that. But at the end of the day, you need to validate those concerns or those disclosures. And so you still need to have the human touch on the back end.
As we go forward, a lot of folks are watching this whole Supreme Court ruling involving Chevron and how that applies to the various agencies. What's your sense of what will be the role of the SEC going forward, and how will the relationship change? What should people be looking for?
Yeah, I think I would answer it specifically on the cyber rule, because I wouldn't want to aver myself as an expert on all things SEC. But the Chevron decision and what we see with respect to the cyber rule, I think it's very much a principles based approach to the materiality disclosure. And what I mean by that is it is well within the norm of disclosure when it comes to the cyber rule. It's not a descriptive requirement to have certain things in place. Meaning, some regulatory regimes, particularly the state level, are very prescriptive. They say you need to do these following things. That's not what the SEC cyber rule says. It says, in fact, doesn't require you to have a cyber program. What it tells you must do is accurately disclose the one that you do have. And so again, that's a well within, I think, the traditional view of regulatory action. And so I don't expect significant changes with respect to the cyber rule and the SEC moving forward. Now, might we see changes in terms of enforcement down the road? We may. But in terms of the rule itself, I see that kind of standing the test of time.
As you kind of think this through, a year ago, people were forecasting things like, fewer companies would go public because the rules were too stringent, or that other companies would go private as a result. I'm not quite clear that we've seen any of that in the last year, but what's your assessment?
Yeah, I haven't, and I can't point to anything that would indicate fewer companies going public, or for that matter, a significant market impact when a company has done a notification around a cyber incident. I don't think we've seen that kind of mid to long term impact. Certainly, there's impact in the short term, but I have not seen significant market consequence as a result of that. And I think some of that goes to what is the purpose of the rule, and that really the rule was designed to give investors a kind of timely, comparable, single place to go look at information regarding that company. And I think by that standard, we see that information out there, and we see consistency among many of the followers that we've looked at thus far. I think, in terms of a changing cybersecurity hygiene, kind of raising the bar of cybersecurity, that's not the intent of the rule, and we haven't seen that, again, because it's not a prescriptive type of regulation. It doesn't tell you what you must do. It tells you to accurately describe what you do.
As we go along here, security, compliance, governance, in a lot of these organizations has been separate. Is that all starting to converge more as a result of all this, or what's driving that trend?
Yeah, I think we see certainly closer working relationships. I think with the SEC rule in particular, I think three particular organizations really need to come closer together in terms of working together. That's the CISO CIO organization, that's the CFO controller, and the third is the GC. So if you think about those three organizations as corners on a triangle, it's about shrinking the size of that triangle to get them working more closely together, have a common understanding of what each bring to the table with regard to this, to have a common vocabulary to discuss cyber issues. And I think that trend of working together around cyber is something that we'll continue to see. It's the nature of cyber. We're so interconnected as a result of the way we've architected the digital world that it requires all of those players to come together, have a common understanding, and work together. It's not you think about cyber as a risk. It's not a single standalone risk. It is in one sense, but it's also the kind of the central nervous system or the rails that many other risks ride over. And so you need to think about cyber more broadly than a risk in isolation. And I would say too that's reflected in some of the 10Ks that we've looked at. I mean, 80% of the first 200 8Ks that we looked at had cyber risk integrated into their ERM. And so I think it's recognized across the industry that that's something that's essential.
I think there was some concern early on about just how accountable C-level execs would be on this. And I think we kind of stepped back a little bit on that. But in your assessment, as a result of all this, is the board more cybersecurity savvy these days? Or are there more cybersecurity folks on those boards?
Yeah, in the proposed rule, not the final rule, there was a requirement to disclose board expertise around cyber, and that was kind of lifted and shifted over onto management in the final rule. And so companies need to disclose that cyber expertise around the program and management. I think in terms of board cyber expertise, I haven't seen significant shifts in the expertise, but what I have seen, and I think is more promising, is a lift of digital acumen across boards. And so I think sometimes it's the most difficult thing to do from a CISO to a board is the translation of technical cyber risk into business risk language, something the board is very comfortable with. And so what we see is closing that gap between the CISO organization and the board in terms of lifting the entire board's digital acumen to a point where they can take a look at that cyber risk, understand the business impact of that risk, and then conduct the oversight that they need to as a result of that. And so it manifests in a number of ways. Board education is one. Increasing frequency of CISO engagement with the board. We see some boards doing executive session with the CISO, again, to build that relationship, to get better at that translation from technical cyber risk to business risk. And so, are we where we need to be over the long term? I would say no. We always have room to grow, but we're going in the right direction when it comes to board understanding of the cyber risk.
Of course, there's risk in everything we do. Is it your assessment that boards and business people in general have a better understanding of exactly what the cybersecurity risk is and are able to make a better judgment today than they were a year ago?
Yeah, look, I think if we look at it in those terms, are we better than we were a year ago? The answer is yes. Are we where we need to be over the long term? I would say the answer is no. I mean, I use ransomware as the example because I deal with ransomware quite a bit. I think there's a shift in understanding, and the most mature organizations immediately know that a ransomware attack is not an IT or a cybersecurity issue, it's a business issue. Because the impact is a business issue, and if it's a business issue, it requires a business solution. And so we see that it manifested in ways that are oftentimes played out whether it's in a real incident or an exercise at that senior executive leadership team level, and having conversations around the incident itself. What is the business impact? Again, it's not a cybersecurity or IT issue, it's a business issue. And so what is the executive team, what does management need to do to resolve that issue? And what are they trying to avoid in terms of business impact? And I think there's a recognition that that's the case today in a way that's more mature than we were a year ago. Still have a long way to go, and it's not universal. But I think we're going just like we are with the boards in the right direction. We just have a longer journey to move through.
Right. And then, what's your best advice to the CISOs and the security people out there as they try to have this conversation? I feel like some of them got access to the boards and the senior level executives, but the conversation isn't quite on the same par and cadence with each other.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to something I said before, and it is one of the most difficult things for CISOs, particularly CISOs that have grown up in the tech stack, to translate that technical cyber risk into business risk to show that business impact. And so I would say the most successful CISOs I see are the ones that can make that translation. So, having the relationships with the business, ensuring that you understand what impact the business would have for certain types of incidents that may occur, and having those relationships and those discussions ahead of time. The more you can do to craft your conversations with the board, your conversations with management to the business impact, I think the more effective that you will be. I mean, you can't just talk about the technical things that you want to do and expect that translation to take place on its own. You need to be actively engaged, building those relationships, making sure you can translate that into business risk. And again, most successful CISOs that I know are able to do that very, very well. And oftentimes the ones that are struggling, they're struggling because they haven't been able to make that connection.
All right, folks, sharing it here. Business executives are comfortable with risk. Everything they do involves risk. It's just you got to put it in terms they can understand. Hey, Matt, thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here. Nice to see you again.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. I'm your host, Natan Solomon, and this is episode 29 of our series. In this episode, we're taking you to AI Dev Summit 2024. There, our co-host Cassandra Chen met up with Allison Cossette, and they discussed ethical AI and mentorship in tech. Allison is a developer advocate at Neo4j, and she shares her unique path from healthcare to data science. Without further ado, let's head over to AI Dev Summit 2024.
Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. My name is Cassandra Chin. Today we're here with Allison Cossette. Yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Allison Cossette. I'm a developer advocate from Neo4j. And should we mention where we are today? Yeah. So we're here at the AI Dev Summit, and we're talking a lot about Gen AI and all the latest in technology for developers.
Do you want to talk about like how you actually got started into tech?
Sure. So actually, I came from healthcare before I came into data science. And so I knew that as a healthcare practitioner, I could help one person at a time, but I'd always loved math and analytics. And so for me, I was able to say, but if I go into data science and I work in healthcare, then I can help many people at one time. So that was my transition, really, was directly from the healthcare side to healthcare analytics. And it's been a love affair of data science and AI ever since.
And you're still doing data science?
I am. So my specialty at Neo4j is around using graph algorithms and graph data science on network structures to understand the data science of relationships.
And like you said, you used to like mentor.
I did, and I do. So for many years, I taught for boot camps and at universities, everything from basic Python and math and all the way through more advanced deep learning courses. I taught for Northeastern, I taught for Metis, I taught for University of North Florida, a number of different colleges. And it's actually one of my favorite things to do is to teach, because especially when it comes to data science, people come in and it seems that the big magical technical thing. And then as they progress, there are these moments where they realize, oh, I can do this. I can do data science. I can work in AI. And those moments to me are always my favorite moments, where someone sees themselves as a technologist for the first time. So that's always like been one of my favorite things. And even now, we'll be at conferences and there'll be students that come up and like, here's my LinkedIn, reach out to me anytime, because a lot of times when you're getting started in technology, even if you've taken the courses, you don't necessarily understand the industry. And so having people that you can reach out to and just ask some basic questions of how do I put my resume together? Or what do you think is a good company for me? Or how do I figure out what's a good company for me? And just having someone that you can talk to that has that experience, I think is really, really helpful. So I definitely encourage folks who are either early in their career or, are in school to really make those connections early, because this is a thing, what I found, people love to talk about what they do and they love to share their story. So I think there are more people that are open in tech to being mentors, even if it's not anything formal, but just someone that you can kind of touch base with and ask a question of. I just think it's such an important part of that growing process. And, we've learned a lot. AI has changed significantly in the last 10 years. And so the more we can bring in that next generation and support them, it's their future. So how do we help them make it what they want it to look like?
I think it's really nice how like you'll connect to students and help them out.
Yeah. We had a couple of students here today that are in for the summer from the East Coast. And so I was like, here's some questions. Here's some things you can do. Reach out. We were at a meetup last night, and there were actually two high school high school men from Germany, and they were in San Francisco vacationing with their parents, and they hit one of our meetups last night. So that was really fun too. So you never know where those folks are going to come up. So I just encourage people in industry too to just reach out and just be present for others.
Yeah, it's all really exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to talk about more about your passion for data science?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really love about data science for the longest time, and I think it might still be, my Twitter handle was numbers are the best storytellers. And it's kind of a funny number story. My husband and I used to do triathlons together. And back in the days when you had to actually connect to your watch to download the data, it tells you how long ago we were doing triathlons. And there was one day he comes home and he says, and I download his data, and I was like, really? And he's like, what? I'm like, come on. And he's like, what? I said, will you please shift on your bike on the hills? And he's like, how do you know I wasn't shifting on the hills? I was like, listen, the altitude is increasing. Your heart rate's going through the roof. Your RPMs are going down. And the power is off the charts. Just shift on the hills. And so just the way that numbers tell stories has always been really interesting to me, because I think one of the things we find is our perception of what's happening around us isn't always in line with that reality. And so data science was a way for me to help people ground themselves in what is the truth in the numbers, right? So that's where a lot of that comes from. But in AI specifically, I've got a really strong passion for what does it mean as a society, right? We live in this algorithmically curated world. Everything from our news feed to what jobs come up when I do a search, everything has been curated by an algorithm that someone like me or others have put into place. And so what is it that we as an industry need to take accountability for when we're building those algorithms, and how we can do that as responsibly as possible? You know, the intention of AI is to support humanity and make it better. And so we just need to always keep that in mind whenever we're working on projects.
You were saying that data science is about numbers, but when I think of numbers, I think of math.
Yes.
Is there like a relationship where they're completely separate?
Oh, it's all math. It's all math. I mean, all AI is math, really. So when we talk about data science, we're talking about building models, and we're building predictive models. But it's also just what we call exploratory data analysis, which is understanding what is I call it the topography of the data. So if we think of a data set like housing prices, right? What is the spread of how many bedrooms are in the community? Oh, they're mostly 3 to 4, but there's a couple that there's a tail. There's like a statistical tail of a 12-bedroom house or something like that. So it's really starts with some basic statistics. And then as we move into model building, you're going to get into more of the calculus and the linear algebra. When we get into deep learning, you're certainly going to get into those areas. So it's all math all the time.
And when we're working with really big numbers, like, I think it becomes a bit hard to do hand calculations.
Yes.
Is there like a code element to this?
Yes. So all of the work that I do and that I've done in data science has all been done in Python. Some people will use R, but there are libraries that you can use in these different technologies that will help you run those summary statistics and help you understand what's in there. So Python and Pandas is really the best place to start when you're trying to analyze data sets. Personal recommendation.
And when we're talking about data sets, like, are there any like data sets you've handled, like specific types?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been around for a minute, so I've had lots of different kinds of data sets. But what I encourage folks to do when they're getting started is to go to Kaggle, because Kaggle has all different kinds of data sets available. And it's a really good place to kind of see, what does data science look like? What are some of the things people are working on? And a lot of them, there'll be an opportunity for you to look at the notebooks that other people have used. So it's just a great community learning source to go to Kaggle. And Kaggle is actually a competition site, technically, where you can participate in different challenges, and sometimes there's monetary value. But it's just a great place to be able to get started and play around and just be part of the community.
And I think you're also giving a talk later today.
I am giving a talk today. So my talk today is called Beyond Vectors. So when we talk about generative AI and the GPTs of the world, one of the things that we know is that the information that they create isn't always exactly accurate. It's something called hallucinations. And so what I'm talking about today is, how do we actually ground that data in like your own database? And how can we make sure that what's in that database is really robust? And what can we learn from that? So life beyond the vector.
Is this like intermediate, beginner?
I would say it's pretty intermediate. You have to have a good understanding of what retrieval augmented generation is. Yeah. But if you do, I think people are going to find that they'll definitely pick up a new trick or two.
Have you worked with retrieval augmented generation a lot before?
Mostly over the last year, as have most. But yeah, like quite a bit. So a lot of the work that we do in developer relations is creating different demos and bringing things out to folks. So I've spent a lot of this past year working in that area. And what I really want to bring to it is how can data science actually support that? So a lot of what I'm talking about today is understanding the data science of what's in that data set that you're using to ground your outputs, and what is it that we can know so we can get the best possible output.
Are there any demos you've created which you found really interesting?
I do have some really fun demos that I like. My coworker Jason Koo and I have done a couple of Star Wars demos that I really enjoy. So we've done some about like how you can use centrality algorithms. We basically built ways for the Star Wars universe. So being able to, if I want to go from Alderaan to Tatooine, what's the most efficient way to get there? Leveraging hyperdrive. So we've done that. And we actually built something where we are able to determine if I want to take down the empire using centrality algorithms, which are the best planets to focus on, depending on what your intentions are. So those are some of the fun ones.
Also want to highlight, like, you're starting your own podcast program.
Yes, I am, which I'm super excited about. We're just starting it here at this conference. It's the AI Community Cast that we're doing at Neo4j. So similar to what the conversations we're having now, I sit down with folks who are speakers and other thought leaders in the industry and just find out what's on their mind and what they want to share with the community today.
I think you'll be a really great podcast host.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We have also like an audio podcast from Neo4j called Graph Stuff FM. So I've hosted that audio, but this is going to be our first video interviews, but I'm excited about it.
And you get a little bit of practice now, practice today.
Yes, we'll definitely get some practice. I spent a lot of time public speaking and in the booth, so I think it'll be all right.
Are there any other like topics you want to talk about?
You know, the big thing for me always is just around this idea of ethical AI. One of the things that causes me personally some concern is the way the training data that's been put into the large language models and the copyright question. So that's something that I think we as an industry really need to take a look at, because I think for me, I believe in something called a pattern right, which means at the moment of creation of any digital asset, there is an inherent right to determine whether it's used in a model and have that pattern extracted from it. And so I just think as an industry, we need to take a harder look at the data that we're using, where that's been sourced from, and have we really got an appropriate opt-in of extracting that pattern. So think of, coded bias from Joy Buolamwini with facial recognition issues, or, the different copyright issues from the Writers Guild and things like that have been going on. So that's really a big concern for me, is what are the digital assets that we're creating, even if it's just the behavior on your phone or on an app, and how is that being used in AI, and what obligations do we as an industry have to society at large to be mindful about those things?
I think that's definitely a tricky one.
Yeah.
I've seen like age limits on AI because of the ethical issues. They don't want children to be at risk.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm looking forward to like one of my dream things is that there's like a K-8 or a K-12 foundation model, and something that's really just built on like language that is the safest for that community. It's not an easy problem to take on, and I certainly wouldn't necessarily be able to put in the computational time to do that, but I think that it's something that's really important, and I think, somebody's going to do it sooner than later.
When you describe the problem, you mean the ethical AI issue?
It's somewhat the ethical AI issue, and I think one of the things that's happened when we look at foundation models is that because of the requirements of how much data you need to build it, the net was cast very wide. And so, there's just a lot of things that may have fallen into that aren't the easiest. And so you have all of these sort of like requirements and guardrails that people put on after the fact. But my question is, are there things that we can do? Can we put those guardrails in at the training data level so that then we don't have to worry about it coming out on the other side? Because if it's not in the training data, then the mathematics of those word combinations isn't going to come out on the other side. So is there something we can do like in the training data that's building these models that can maybe mitigate some of this? So again, I'm not the AI researcher. I'm sure somebody is working on it, but those are the things that sort of I ponder.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Like, we want to solve it at the root cause, not just put like rails at the end.
Exactly. So those are some of the things that I contemplate.
It's all really interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you for talking with me today, Allison.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Debojyoti, and I'm excited to bring you a presentation on product management, via which we can drive innovation of customer satisfaction by injecting AI. So in this presentation, we'll explore how an AI-enabled customer-centric approach to product management can lead to an innovation and heightened customer satisfaction, all the while creating sustainable long-term business value. So let's really start with outlining the key topics that we will cover today. So first, we'll define what a product management is in context of project management as well. Identify how it's super critical to the business. Next, we'll kind of delve into how AI is sort of empowering customer-centric product development approach, and how we can tie a lot of things end to end in the entire journey by making it more efficient, making it more sustainable by injecting AI-powered tools into the mix. And then finally, we will explore some strategies and mental model that has helped me as a PM kind of navigate my career across Amazon, Maersk, to kind of deliver sustainable value to our customers from a quick and nimble customer-centric approach. Cool. So I think in terms of what product management is, project management, so I would be using both the terms interchangeably, and I think because in the context, both will kind of derive the same value out of the presentation as my hope would be. So essentially, they sit at the cusp of business and technology empowerment, where we drive using technology, using platform, using project, we try to drive significant value of the program or the product that we want to kind of launch for our customers, or for achieving the business value. So how has AI kind of helped here, right? So AI is super critical here because it has kind of transformed the entire PM journey by automating a lot of mundane tasks, providing real-time data-driven insights that has helped us make informed decisions faster and real-time. So that brings us to the role of a PM. So the role is very evolving due to AI integration into market research, into customer feedback, into analysis, into sentiment analysis, into product road mapping. So the entire journey has been impacted by the power of AI. And of course, I will kind of detail how each and every field has been empowered for us in our subsequent section. So AI has essentially helped a product manager predict trends, prioritize features, and manage resources efficiently by kind of analyzing vast amount of data and generating insights out of them. So let's then now start breaking the entire life cycle. So the first bit to the AI powered customer backward approach to product cycle is to kind of identify what the customers actually need. This is where the crux of everything should start from. Correct, because at the end of the day, we have to deliver features for our customers, and ensuring that it's the most impactful of all the laundry list of items that we could do for our customers. So AI powered tools can create more personalized, more customer-centric products. For example, AI algorithms can analyze large data sets to predict customer preference and behavior, leading to a more targeted product designs. So we start with how do we do that? Right? Like, how do we kind of perceive the customer needs? So there are a lot of AI-based tools. For example, Google Analytics, Mixpanel, Amplitude Track, which kind of tracks the user behavior, enabling the PMs to gather a deeper insight into the customer preferences. It also helps create something that is very important, which is the user persona, right? Like, for which set of customers and their persona are we kind of delivering the value. So there are a lot of AI driven persona creation tools such as HubSpot, where we can make personas, and that's the most accurate based on the real world data or based on the target segments that we want to kind of focus on, thus eliminating a lot of guesswork. So the start of the journey on identifying personas is something that is very important, which has got a real help from the aforementioned AI tools. The second aspect is about the entire product development process, right? So when we have developed and kind of identified what the personas that we would be targeting with, and then we would come on the features that would help with our target segments in the most impactful manner, we then need to come into process flows. For example, A/B testing, code development, or even prototyping on what we would want to release as a feature. Tools like GitHub Copilot can assist the developers write code faster. Prototyping tools like Figma can really help, and of course with the corresponding AI plugins, can really help streamline the entire design process, and thus enabling and enriching the UX or the UI that we will launch for our feature, for our product. So this entire journey from writing a faster code to creating the most impactful prototype of the UX could all be achieved by injecting various AI technologies into it. So now we will move to the timeline where we have to utilize and analyze the customer feedback. So how do we do that? So AI has again helped us here in a big way on gathering feedback. There are multitude of tools like AI enhanced chatbots, surveys that can automatically collect the customer feedback in real time and help us kind of draw insights on how the customers has perceived it, or what is the features that they were expecting versus what we have developed. Is there a gap? And essentially, like a lot of surveys on usability score, net promoter score, stuff like that, which we can absolutely use it as a part of our continuous improvement cycle in our net iteration or our next feature launch. There are AI powered surveys, for example, by SurveyMonkey, Zendesk, which has really impacted on how we kind of gather, process, and generate insights from customer feedback real time. There are also NLP tools, natural language processing tools, like Monkey-learn, Google Cloud AI, that can also perform sentiment analysis on our customer reviews. So not only does it help generate the insight, it also tells us how exactly has the customer perceived our launch, or our product once they have started to kind of consume it. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they angry? Are they pissed? So we can kind of derive a lot of insight and detail out exactly why are they and why they have exactly felt that. And this is a gold mine of data that we can then use to kind of make our product or add into the entire cycle of continuous improvement. The last part in this entire feedback tool is where we could leverage AI for a continuous feedback loop. So AI can absolutely continuously monitor various channels by automatically flagging any concern. So it's not just a static source of data, but it gives us a real-time, continuous supply of feedback from our customers, and on which we can do a lot of predictive analysis, data insight analysis, potentially forecast a churn rate, and that kind of suggests improvement on any feature or any launch proactively and real time. So this the entire gap between when we have launched till the time we have received the feedback on what we have launched has got reduced, and like within seconds now we can have the real time feedback of our customers. So now we have kind of delved deep on how AI tools have really helped us with the product management, with the launch, with the customer feedback and customer analysis, and essentially presenting us with a very, very good customer centric approach on our product development. We would now kind of go to the second phase of our presentation, where we kind of speak a bit more on driving innovation and satisfaction of customers via like, let's say, an AI driven approach. So here where we would kind of understand the future trends of what our customer segments are anticipating, the best leveraging the best technologies, any predictivity in the customer trend, market shifts, looking at the macroeconomic scenarios, are all enabled by appropriate AI tools. So it's not just a human intuition, but also helped on with a very strong data-driven predictive approach by AI tools like Data Robot, H2O.ai, where they can analyze and kind of simulate various product development scenarios to drive innovation based on the simulated future trend. So AI not only helps us to kind of have the most efficient and most customer centric approach to product development, but it also helps us become future proof by simulating and generating insights on how the shift in trend or the market segment would look like. So there are other ways by which the AI could help. So in terms of product ideation, predictive road mapping, where tools like product plan or AHA, which kind of enable the product manager or the project manager to kind of forecast the future feature demands based on the customer usage, how they are kind of interacting with the system, any historical feedback. So in our entire roadmap and in our entire backlog of what we need to prioritize, we can again leverage AI to give us the best backlog or ensure the best trade-off that we can do with our limited resources, so that we can drive and deliver the most impactful output that our customers are expecting. So AI has also kind of helped us in our road mapping by already suggesting what we should be focusing on and prioritizing. The second bit about this driving innovation is to kind of understand how the customers are satisfied, right? Because at the end of the day, we can keep on launching features after features, but if our end customers are not satisfied with it, we will not find adoption, and we can't then deliver the value that our feature or our product was expected to kind of deliver. So AI has now helped us monitor real-time customer feedback interactions and generate instant feedback on the customer sentiments. Tools like Calendar Bridge, Sprinkler offers AI-powered sentiment analysis real time, which kind of help us to take quick data-driven decision to kind of bridge the gap that our customers are calling out, and thus giving the customers the best customer satisfaction that is potentially there to give. This is a marked improvement where previously the time between our launch to the usage to the feedback used to easily run in weeks. So we have now scored an opportunity where we can drive real-time enhancements to, like, let's say a feature launch. So with that said, we should also be very cognizant that there is a cutting edge innovation that AI is bringing, but we also need to ensure that it is practical and usable, because at the end of the day, adoption is the key, and we should be kind of very pragmatically use the power of AI, and it should always help us take a decision rather than make a decision on our behalf. And at the end of the day, it's our role as PMs to kind of ensure that we are taking the best decision on behalf of our customer to drive the most powerful impact that is there to be delivered. So essentially, by integrating AI powered tools and techniques into every point of our product management lifecycle, we can then show how the product management is evolving with technology. This really demonstrated how an AI can enhance customer centricity, streamline feedback loop, drive innovation, and all the while improving on efficiency and satisfaction of our product and feature. So that brings us to the third phase of our presentation, where I have kind of first taken you through how AI has helped us to create personas to help with the entire road mapping, to how AI has then helped us to generate better customer insights, and so helped us understand with data enrichment, data insights, sentiment analysis to deliver the best feature with real time efficiency. So now what I wanted to also take you through is some sort of mental model that has helped me as a PM do well in my job, to kind of deliver the most impactful innovation, or to most impactful feature for our customers, thus generating a long-term sustainable business value. So here are some of the product management methodologies that has helped. So one is definitely customer obsession. I think, to be honest, working at Amazon for better half of a decade, I think the company is really what the company is today because of its extremely customer obsession mindset, where everything starts from what pain points are we delivering for our customers and what is the most impactful of them. So at the core of our process, it should not be, like an insight analysis or someone's opinion. It should be a hard data-driven approach to understanding what our customer really wants and how can we deliver the best on behalf of them. So we have to be very cognizant that we as PMs are the voice of our customers, and we have to live and breathe their life when we are kind of working on the product feature and the product development. That is the customer obsession and the customer centricity that I wanted to emphasize yet again. The second decision, or the mental model to a decision is one-way door or two-way door. What it really means is that we sometimes come into analysis paralysis, where hey, we have to take a decision whether we want to go with option A or option B, and we can't take a faster decision probably because we don't have the required data, we don't have the needed confidence to move to either of the two, or the multitude of the options that we have to kind of proceed. And that adds up to the slowness of how quickly we can deliver, and impacts the velocity of a feature delivery. So what has helped me here is to kind of go with a one-way door or two-way door. So one-way door are those decisions where if we go in and if we take it, there is no turning back. probably, like investing on an architecture, where if we have invested on type A of an architecture and we have done the entire code base on that, then probably we can't very, very easily go back to, like, let's say, architecture B. When the decisions are one-way door, where to kind of traverse our way back is a challenge. We have to give it the needed time. We have to give it the needed thought, ensure that we have got the data, the expert opinions, kind of like back it, and only then move forward. But there are a lot of decisions which are a result of two-way door, where even if we take a decision between door A and door B and door C, probably if we decide with door C, we go ahead, and then we realize then probably not, like door C was not the best option. We take 2 steps back, we go to door B. So where the ease of kind of going back to the original position by rolling back features, creating enhancements on top, these are some of the decisions where we should not be spending a lot of time on, where we can, in this, with the sake of like improving on the velocity of feature delivery, we can go in, and if we hit a roadblock, we can always traverse back and choose the second option. So this is something that has really helped me kind of take faster, better, and more accurate decisions, during my time as a PM. The third is kind of like a continuation of the above two, which is deliver small and fast. Why I have always emphasized on delivering small and fast is because it helps in two very important ways. One is it helps with the adoption of our feature. So if we wait to kind of deliver the entire end-to-end feature directly at one go for our customers, the adoption of a very big feature also kind of works against the cognitive skills of our customers, because at the end of the day, human mind wants to take path of least resistance. So if we kind of help them with smaller chunks of what we want them to experience and adopt, it is best to kind of deliver the big item into small chunks, faster, and in phases. The second aspect that's also very critical here is to understand the feedback loop. Rather than waiting for the entire product or the project delivery, and then we work on the feedback of the customer, we would always be working on a huge time between the launch, between the feedback, between getting it coded and then relaunching. Versus if the deliveries are small, we can have a faster deployment, faster adoption, faster feedback, and then we can already incorporate those feedbacks, those critical feedbacks into the second phase or the third phase of our subsequent delivery of our roadmap or in terms of our phase-wise approach. So apart from the entire AI tools that we have covered, I have also given you a sense on what mental model we should always have. That would be, and I think if we can have a very strong PM mental model along with the aid of the AI that we will be empowering our process and our platform with, I'm sure we will be able to deliver the best value that is to be delivered for our customer. And that brings us to the end of our presentation, and hope you guys have really liked it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.